Hello, everyone. Oh my God. I really don't like mine. My name is Walt Brunelli. I'm the president of the Aurora Project, and I want to welcome you here to Aurora today. A couple of little housekeeping things is, please, if you're parking outside, if you park beyond the can I laugh on this mic? But if you're parked beyond that flagpole, the little concrete barrier, we share the parking lot with the local fire department, so we want to always keep that pathway open over there. So I think everyone is good. I always keep an eye on it, but I just like to be a good neighbor with that in case there's an emergency. Also, there's a restroom back this hallway. To your left, there's only one, so if you need that. I talk a little bit about the Aurora Project. This is 25 years that we've been trying to start an artist residency program here in Aurora. And we have 5 buildings, which this is one of them, and the other 4 are down across from Cathedral State Park. One of them would be our housing facility, houses like 15 people, and then there's a recording studio, a yoga studio, a writing studio. There's a workshop there with stained glass, woodworking. But that's all leased out to Jacob's Ladder, which we've leased to them. This is our second term of lease, maybe 8 years now, which is an addiction program, which it's really kind of nice because they're one of the top 10 in the country. But they're using the arts and using your hands to help solve folks with addictions. And it's sort of, we always want, we want to do the Aurora Project, an artist residency, but we're sort of doing that every time I think about that. And so, if you're down there, if you look up there, the buildings are all from the 1880s, in relatively really good shape, and getting ready to probably put some paint on them next year. It's been amazing that if you look at them, they've been painted for 25 years, and they still look very good. And this building here is an 1850s. It was given to us by Alice Penzo, who herself, Michelle Moray, and me were the founders of the Aurora Project. We were the ones who decided we were going to try to start this madness. I'm really happy that we're still doing it. We have a great board of directors. We've had a wonderful program season this year. And this is, Doug is here, but also hanging on the walls is a local painter who is from here, Louis Stemple, which his show opens September the 13th. There's more pieces upstairs, but this is the ones we got hung so far. But it'll be hung up through the barn dance, which is coming up the first Sunday in October. If you've not been to the barn dance, it's absolutely a fun afternoon. And Doug and his group plays their music, along with Alice, and it's Aurora Celtic. So we're very active. It's all volunteer, and we're happy to have you here. And then I always get the foot that there is a donation box here. We do this all for free, and all of us have worked very hard at it. And so if you feel such that you'd like to make a donation for the Aurora Project, it's more than welcome. And if not, please enjoy just being here, because this is such a spectacular building, and it's nice to have you, nice to see everyone here. So with that said, I'm going to ask Viola Winsel, who has been our treasurer for 24 years, to come up and introduce Doug to you all. So enjoy. I think you'll love it. And if you haven't, we have the list of our programs that we've had already and the ones that are coming up over here on a rack card. So welcome again, and thank you.
Okay, it is our pleasure and my distinct honor to introduce Doug VanGundy, who many of you know, of course, from the barn dance. And so when he is a man for all seasons. He does music, he writes poetry, he edits an anthology, and he won Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And it is a really extraordinary thing. And when of course I did my homework, and I looked up everything on Wikipedia and all of that. And they are very interesting things. One of them says he was born in Pennsylvania. Of course, we'll forgive him for that. But right underneath it, it says, no, he was born in Elkins. So I decided we would ignore Pennsylvania and claim him as one of ours, right? So he gave a very nice and interesting lecture, part of which my daughter-in-law listened to, and I said, in Morgantown, and I said, what? And he's not doing it for us, but guess what? He's doing it for us. And so what he did for them, and he will also talk to us about it, is his book, Eyes Glowing at the Edge of the Woods, which are an anthology of 15 writers, very modern writers, all of West Virginia. And I have to say, to pat ourselves a little bit on the back. Of the 15, 5 have spoken here for the Aurora Project. We had Glenn Taylor and Ann Pancake, Maggie Anderson, Irene McKinney, and Jessie Van Erden. Not bad for a little group like us. Now, of course, I hope that Doug is also talking about his own poetry and is not just generous towards other poets. I want to hear from him too. And he has written a life about his own poetry, A Life Above Water, which I have read from beginning to end. And I hope you all read it too. It's extraordinary. He has also written a very interesting article about the great flood in Kentucky, where so many people died, when the dam broke. And but this here, what brought him here tonight, is Eyes Glowing at the Edge of the Woods, and I've read that from beginning to end too. And some of it is heartbreaking. Some of it is totally enraging, because what they have done to the state here. And all of it is totally amazing. But some of it is also amusing, really amusing. And one that I like particularly is the last one in the book, by Meredith Sue Willis. And this is, I want you all to read this. This is a story that could have happened in West Virginia. You recognize everybody in there. And you think, well, that sounds pretty familiar. And it's wonderful. So I'm so happy that you are here. And it's now your turn.
Thank you, Viola, and thank you, Walt, and thanks, Alice, and thanks everyone for having me back to Aurora. My Facebook story just a few days ago popped up a picture that said, your feed 14 years ago, and it was a picture of the Aurora barn dance. I don't know if that was the first one we played or not, but we've been playing the barn dance for a long time, and always glad to be part of that event. And of course, you mentioned Jessie Van Eerden was here. Jessie and I taught a day of workshops
Yes.
up here, again, like
25 years.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. Jesse's been gone for 8 years from the state. So, and I was born in Pennsylvania, but I was born there when I was too young to fight about it. And as my banjo player and one of my best friends, Paul Gartner, says, I got here as fast as I could. I actually got here when I was started coming to West Virginia. My family, my mom's side of the family is all from Wetzel, Montague County. And so I've been coming to West Virginia my whole life, and I finally moved here when I was 8. So I'm 60 now. So let me talk a little bit about, I'm going to start by talking about the anthology, and I'm going to finish by reading you some new work of mine, which is what Mary saw reading in Morgantown of my original stuff. So I'm going to finish up with, I have a new book coming out next summer from the University Press of Kentucky, and so I'll be reading from that new manuscript. But first, let me talk to you about this anthology, Eyes Glowing at the Edge of the Woods. I am co-editor of this. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Laura Long. Laura's from Buckhannon. She's actually retired now from Lynchburg College, but she's a fiction writer and a poet. And we edited this collection together. We were approached by Abby Freeland, who was at that time the acquisitions editor at West Virginia University Press, their literary imprint, which is called VanGundy Press. And she said, hey, how would you like to do an anthology of contemporary West Virginia writing? And so we had a number of meetings to talk about what that means to each of us and what that would mean for a book that would result from our labors. So there was the first anthology of contemporary writing from West Virginia, also came out from W.Va, and it had come out about 15 years earlier. It was called Backcountry, and it was edited by Irene McKinney, but it was largely a project of an Appalachian literature class at W.Va. Was the beginnings of that. But that book was 15 years old, and we all, Laura, Abby, and myself, all recognized that there were lots of writers who were writing who were not included in that anthology. And a lot of folks, when you first think of West Virginia writers, you think of Pearl Buck, maybe, who was born in Hillsborough. She left when she was 2. Okay. I mean, I was born in Pennsylvania, but I've stayed around, unlike our dear Miss Buck. No shade to the Nobel Prize winning Pearl Buck. But, and maybe you might think of Davis Grubb, who wrote Night of the Hunter, and maybe you think of some more contemporary writers like Irene McKinney, who was our poet laureate, or Mark Harshman, who's our current poet laureate, or Anne Pancake, best-selling novelist and short story writer, and or maybe Jane Ann Phillips. But there are so many, and all of those people, the last 4 people I've mentioned, are all in this anthology, but there are so many other voices to be heard. And as we were discussing what we wanted this book to be, we wanted it to essentially be, and this is an awkward phrase, so we didn't use it in any of the promotional material, but this was sort of a ruling idea for us, it was the state of writing in the state. What's happening and who's doing the work. We want to make sure that we captured as diverse a collection of voices as we possibly could, and I'll come back around to that in just a minute. There are a lot of people who write, and we very quickly realized that if we just put out a call for folks to send in work, that we would be snowed under by submissions, and we may not get submissions by people who we, by God, wanted in the book. So we decided that the first criteria was that you had to have a book published by a national press to be included, or you had to have publications in a major journal. And that narrowed things down considerably. And then we started making sort of a dream list of folks we wanted to include. And everybody said yes, including Jane Ann Phillips, including Meredith Sue Willis. It's a staggering collection. The title comes from a poem of Irene's that is not in the book, but she talks about seeing West Virginia just from the highway. And all you know of West Virginia when you drive through it at night are just the eyes glowing at the edge of the woods. And there's so much more to know, but that you don't understand what's going on past the edge of the forest, you know. And we thought that that was a really apt title for this collection because we wanted to show what was happening beyond the surface impressions. We really liberally applied Occam's razor to this whole thing. Whatever is the easiest way to do things, we thought, well, let's see if that works, and that's what we did. So Laura's primarily a fiction writer, I'm primarily a poet. We said, well, how are we going to divide this up? Laura says, how about I take fiction, you take poetry? I said, great. And that's what we did. When it came time to sequence the book, and there are, actually I think there's 60 some authors and like 80 some pieces, and because some poets have 2 poems. Yeah, something like that. We started thinking, well, do we group these thematically, or do we do them chronologically? How do we put this thing together? These are questions that you don't think of reading an anthology, but when it's time to edit one, these are things that you have to consider. And so I said, let's just put them in alphabetical order and see how it reads. It starts with Gail Adams, and it ends with Meredith Sue Willis. I'll just say that. We also wanted to make sure that we represented a variety of ages and ethnicities and socioeconomic backgrounds. There's a concept in social sciences and in education that's called the myth of the single story. I'm sure everyone in this room has met someone who thought West Virginia was a single story. That we were this monolithic one thing. And I'm sure everyone in this room recognizes that that's not the case. Not even close. So there are, in this collection, there are established writers and there are people for who this is their first anthologized selection, who had good publications in journals but hadn't published a book yet. There are men and women, there are urban Appalachians and rural Appalachians, there are a number of queer voices, there are a number of poets of color. We have a story by an Egyptian immigrant to West Virginia, Rajiz Hassib, who has a wonderful short story called Quilting, about a Vietnam vet whose wife dies and leaves him a bag full of quilt squares. And I can't even talk about this, it's such a moving story. So he's this big burly kind of motorcycle, like Hell's Angels kind of guy, and he goes into the fabric store and asks the women in there, hey, does anybody want these? And so they start asking, well, where's it from? Where did these come from? And he tells the story, my wife died of breast cancer. These were hers, and they said, why don't we teach you how to put this together? And so there are 2 novices in the class. One is the narrator, who is a 30-year-old Egyptian woman who has been brought to America to marry a man she's never met, who is a postdoc at Princeton. and the other is this big, hairy, motorcycle-y Vietnam vet, and they learn to quilt sort of side by side. It's just very moving. So we have Rajia's story. We have, actually the first piece I want to share is from Norman Jordan. And I don't know if you all have heard of Norman. Norman's a poet who deserves a lot wider reading, and sadly Norman died right before we started putting this book together, and his widow was kind enough to let us use some of his poems. Norman's an African-American poet, what we would call an Appalachian poet, thanks to Frank X. Walker, who coined that wonderful and apt phrase. And he grew up in Ansted, West Virginia. So he grew up around work and the railroads, and he grew up in that John Henry country. So this is called Appalachian Ghost. As a boy, I remember men coming up the mountain from working in the Hawk's Nest Tunnel, covered with white silicon dust, and men going down the mountain from working in the coal mines, covered with black amorphous carbon dust, all of them carrying in their lungs industrial diseases, slowly and painfully killing them and their dreams. We did notice some themes that showed up. Some of the things that we happen to associate with West Virginia, we do. Some of the cliches exist because there's a truth to them. There's a lot of writing in here about labor. There's a lot of writing in here about economic hardship and lack. There's a lot of reference to extractive industries, coal mining and timbering and the like. There's a wonderful short story by Misha Marin called Choke Damp, which is a miner's term for the methane gas that gets trapped low because it's heavier than the air, and sometimes they hit a pocket of this explosive gas, but also you can't breathe in there. And it's a story about a young man who is going to work in the mines, and his sister tries to talk him out of it. There are poems that celebrate other West Virginians and historical events in West Virginia. Jim Harms from over in Morgantown, who taught W.Va for years, has a wonderful poem in here called Kennedy Wins West Virginia, about West Virginia delivering John F. Kennedy to the White House. Our 5 electoral votes took him over the top. Irene McKinney has a marvelous poem in here called Homage to Hazel Dickens, which I think maybe I will finish my discussion of this book with that. There are immigrant stories. There are stories of people whose families have been here for many generations. There are stories written by West Virginians that have nothing to do with West Virginia, and poems that have nothing to do with West Virginia directly. And that's what we wanted. We didn't want the anthology to reinforce any stereotypes. We didn't want it to fertilize that myth of the single story. We wanted it to be as diverse and as lively and as au courant as possible. I'd like to be able to read some of these fiction pieces, but given the time, I could read one and we'd be done. So I do want to point out that if you know, I put these markers in here for a reason, didn't I? There we go. Anne Pancake was kind enough to give us the title story from her 2007 or 8 collection of, I'm sorry, 17 or 18 collection called, of short stories called Me and My Daddy Listen to Bob Marley. And if you've not read this story, it's one of the most astonishing stories. I mean, of course I'm going to give you superlatives. I'm proud of this book, and I'm proud of the pieces that are in it, but this is seriously one of the most startling and astonishing stories I've ever read. And I want to just read you the first paragraph of it. It's in third person, but it's a really close third person. And it's really from the point of view of about a 3-year-old boy. In the good grandma smells Mish stands. Nighttime powder and church perfume, his fingers tumbling the man in his pocket. His daddy peels the foil from the tiny package he has taken from Gran's dressing table drawer. Daddy, hand tremoring, fishes in the package's dropper of water, snares the lens on a finger, and dabs at his eye as Mish watches. It's not out of curiosity for the contacts, those he has seen his whole life, whenever Daddy can get them. Mish is used to that, looking on from the low single bed at Daddy's house, bedtime, get up time, Daddy picking plastic in and out of his eyes. Mish watches for the funniness of Daddy at the same dressing table where Grandma combs her hair and puts on her makeup, for the strangeness in Gran's mirror of Daddy's raggedy-brimmed steel cap, his penny-colored beard. With the effort to keep his eye open, Daddy's top lip is raised, and in the mirror, Mish can see the 2 big front teeth browning from the middle out. Then the lens pops in, and as though having the thing in his eye grants him the gift of seeing behind, Daddy speaks. I told you, wait for me downstairs. Daddy's right eye streams, and the man somersaults in Mish's pocket. We don't realize that it's an army man that he's got in his pocket that he's playing with, and he doesn't bring it out of his pocket. It's that close third, even though it's a third person narrative, you notice these childlike descriptions of his penny-colored beard, right? The good grandma smells, right? Nighttime powder and church perfume. It's an astonishing story. I think Laura and I were both, well, and Abby and the press, we were sort of dumbfounded by the immensity of talent and the broadness of voices that we were able to include in this anthology. When it came out, I really wanted to, Laura lives in Virginia, and she attended a couple of the readings. But, see, that's what happens when you open them slow. Nope. So, she attended a couple of the readings, but I wanted to make sure that there was a reading in every area of West Virginia possible, and that anyone who is in the anthology could have the opportunity to read from it in public. So we had these group readings in Wheeling, and Morgantown, and Clarksburg, and Elkins, and Lewisburg, and Huntington, and Charleston, and Beckley. We tried to have readings that were within an hour of everybody in the book so that it could be a part of the public readings. And I didn't realize that that's not something that's usually done with an anthology. Usually there aren't public readings from anthologies. You put them together and there it is, and you buy it or not. But it seemed like the right thing to do, and WVU was happy to let me do it. So, but it really brought together one of the unintended consequences of this anthology assembling process was that it built a really lovely community of writers, many of whom didn't know each other and didn't know each other's work. Not all of the writers live in West Virginia. Many of them are part of the West Virginia diaspora. They're from here, are write about here, but live elsewhere. Others are folks who were born somewhere else and came and made their home here, made their lives here, their artistic lives. But having those readings and having this public-facing events that celebrated this anthology which in itself is celebrating these writers and their work. A lovely community has grown up around the anthology, and that was brought home to me again when I posted the information about this reading on social media, and the number of people who posted and said, "I'm so proud to be in that anthology." People I haven't heard from in years, but right there, they wanted to chime in. I wish I could be there. It's really something, and I've been talking to WVU just in the very early stages. This book came out in 2017. Next year will be the 10th anniversary of the book. I would love to, at the 10th anniversary, announce that we're starting a new updated edition where we might include some of the wonderful writers that are writing now who were not publishing when this book came out 10 years ago. I think of people like Laura Lee Morris, who's from up around Mannington, and has a wonderful collection of short stories called Jaws of Life, and an amazing transformative novel called The Stone Catchers. Have you read it, Kate? You're nodding your head.
It's great.
About school violence, and it gives nothing away when I say that the main character is forced to kill his best friend as he's trying to. This happens in the first couple of pages, and it's what happens in that community in the aftermath, and what forgiveness looks like, and what grief looks like, and what guilt looks like. It's an incredible book. Anyway, Laura needs to be included. I'm proud to say that two of my students have started to make real names for themselves. Torley Bush, who is a graduate of the West Virginia Wesleyan Low Residency MFA program, of which I am the director, had a first book come out last year called Requiem for a Redbird from Pulley Press out in Seattle, Washington, and that's done very well. It's been nominated for a number of national and regional prizes, and Torley's been, if you've not seen Torley read, they are a powerful, powerful reader, very political and very passionate. And another student of mine, former student of mine, Kevin Chesser, who lives just down the road in Thomas, his first full collection comes out also from Pulley Press here in a couple of weeks, called Please Consider These Alternate Names for the Moon. And he writes these beautiful, surreal, I don't know anybody who writes poems like Kevin does. One of the advanced readers, one of the blurbs in the book says, these poems are like jokes that turn out to be prayers. I start out laughing and end up crying. And so I'm very excited to see that book out in the world. Anyway, there are a lot of voices that aren't represented, and I would love to see a second edition of this come out that's updated. And if so, maybe we can have one of our regional readings here at Aurora. Make that happen.
Great.
Are there any questions about the anthology or about the process of editing an anthology? I can tell you that the word anthology shares a root word with anther in part of a flower. Anthology comes from a Greek word that means a gathering of blossoms. So it's like a bouquet of flowers, which I think is a lovely idea to bring to the putting together of a book like this. Any questions or thoughts, ideas? Sure.
I'm not sure if this is a question or a request, but you mentioned reading more from this.
Yeah.
Would you mind targeting another poem or two?
I'm good. I was going to take the questions, then finish up with a couple of another, at least one more poem, and then read some from my new manuscript. Hearing none, I now pronounce you man and wife. No. Do not know where that came from. Well, let me share two poems by two poets of local interest, poets who have both performed here in Aurora and just down the road in Rollsburg. I had the great good fortune to put together a poetry performance with Maggie Anderson and Irene McKinney that we did for a couple of years. And so I thought I'd maybe finish up with some poems from right nearby. This is from Maggie Anderson, whose family is from over in Rollsburg. And then I arrive at the powerful green hill. Up, up I follow, the creek bed through downed branches on spongy leaves, rimed and slippery. The way is clear because it is late winter. Wet snow patches, the runoff cold, cold to the touch, a tang of ice still in it. And then I arrive at the powerful green hill, my place, my exact location, where I began and started from, where I will end beneath this ground. I have brought everything I've left undone, letters and resolutions, almost loves, hard grudges, to give to the wind that takes them up, tosses them down, down until my hands are empty, and I am as thin and light as a girl. And this from Irene McKinney, homage to Hazel Dickens, another great West Virginian, who sometime, if you're interested, I have a really great Hazel Dickens story. Basically, I write songs because Hazel Dickens, at a party, I met her, and I had given a poetry reading as I was emceeing a concert over in Shepherdstown. And I read a poem in between each of the acts as part of the transition. And she came up to me after there was a party after the concert for everyone who was involved. And so I was madly playing fiddle with Tracy Schwartz and a bunch of other musicians. And she said, well, you're a good musician too. And I said, well, thank you. And she said, have you ever written any songs? And I said, no, ma'am. And she said, get on it. And she like literally thumped me in the chest. And so I had never written a song before, but I went home and wrote a song. Anyway, this is called Homage to Hazel Dickens. And for what it's worth, this is one of my all-time favorite of Irene's poems. Neither the house nor the barn can keep me. Now I'm moving on. Whether I go or stay, the pain will be the same. So now I'm picking up my suitcase with the leather handle that Uncle Brock brought home from France, and now I'm waving to you all. After this, nothing can ever hurt me because my heart is wrung like a wet towel here, and my lips are swollen and red. By way of Garrett's Gap, and then by way of Deep Creek Road, I've come to the turning and turning away from air, fog-soaked and shining, away from the suck hole in the river. The sewing factory closes, and I've got to have a paycheck. Since I was 12, I knew I'd have to turn my back on the smoky kitchen, on the tow-headed boys fighting at the well, on my mother's peaceable face. The faces I will meet later will never measure up. You know that. Nothing will. Both me and you have got to go sometime. Come on, let's tear the heartstrings loose and head for the station. Whether we go or stay, we've lost it. The porch, the cold crocks of cream in the cellar, the red-bone hound in the yard, the wild azalea all orange and sweet. We've lost it, standing here looking at it. Standing here looking at it this way. So we should turn our faces outward from this place, string our guitars, and go. Thank you for those wonderful folks in this wonderful anthology, if I do say so myself. I'm going to finish up by reading just a handful of poems from my new manuscript, which is called Stones and Ghosts. And This is the title poem, or it's the poem from whence the title comes, but it's called A People's History of Randolph County, West Virginia. And it is, I usually don't like to say anything about poems and specifically let the poem, if the poem can't do its job without me explaining what it is, then I should maybe go back and revise the poem. However, there's something that you won't see in the air as you hear it, and that is this poem is, it's a mirror poem. So the first 11 lines happen, and then there's some white space, and then the same 11 lines happen in the reverse order, which changes things a little bit. And I came upon this form. I thought I had invented it, and then I found that other people had done it also. But I was thinking about the way that archaeologists take down a layer at a time, very slowly. I thought this was sort of like the stratigraphy of the earth, or an architectural dig, going down into and then coming up with a changed perspective. You be the judge. Imagine how it used to be. All that remains now are stones and ghosts. You can't look at the old topographical maps and see the places where the miners used to live. Even the names of the settlements are missing. Jeff Scott's, Laurel, Roaring Creek Junction. If you go there today, bushwhack through briars and Joe Pye. You will have to dig into the ground to find anything to prove that people ever even lived here. To prove that people ever even lived here, dig into the ground. To find anything, you will have to bushwhack through briars and Joe Pye if you go there today. Jeff Scott's, Laurel, Roaring Creek Junction. Even the names of the settlements are missing, the places where the miners used to live. Look at the old topographical maps and see. All that remains now are stones and ghosts. You can't imagine how it used to be. This is called Lucky, and I was lucky enough to have it included in an anthology called What Things Cost, an anthology for the people. It was an anthology of labor poetry, labor writing. My people crawled up from underground, birthed into the failing sun of West Virginia and Western Pennsylvania, 6 days a week, eyes blinking even in dim winter, adjusting to a light brighter than the one still burning on their own foreheads. Every home in every little town walking distance from work. Every white frame house facing an undulating brick street. Each household centered on the mine or the mill. Coal and glass, coal and steel, coal shoveled into the furnace, loaded into the stove, ground into the knees and elbows of sweat-stained work clothes. Everything underlaid by that prehistoric heat. My people came from coal country Scotland, trading the pit for the deep mine, that monoculture for this melting pot. One backbreaking job for another that was exactly the same. Sometimes somebody died. Sometimes a broken back or snapped femur was called lucky. Saturday nights they went dancing at the Moose or Elks. Sundays they were starched Presbyterians, skin scrubbed bathtub pink. Monday morning, they were back in the earth before daybreak, the lucky among them resurrected in time for supper. Thank you. This one has an epigraph from Don West. Some of you probably know who Don West was. I was talking to a friend of mine who was a VISTA volunteer in the late 60s, early 70s, and he said he would go to homes in southern West Virginia, W.Va homes, and they would have 2 books, just 2 books. They'd have the Bible and Don West's Clods of Southern Soil, collection of poetry. So this is called Roaring Creek, and the epigraph from Don West is, I love the sad, solemn beauty in your mountains. I return today to a favorite place, a deep water hole in a mountain creek. The stream in front of me dovetailed with my memory, window pane clear, emerald green, braided beneath rhododendron and feathery hemlock. I wish you could go there with me. Wade into your knees, wincing at water that remembers last winter's snowfall, handing the heat in your fingers and feet to the stream. Turn all the rocks in its lumpy bed. You won't startle any minnows, nor find a single crawdad or caddisfly larva. The surface hasn't been dimpled by water striders for over 80 years, and the deep green holes that harbored lunker brook trout hold only last year's leaves and quartz pebbles turned orange with iron. Topo maps tell the tale. The headwaters of every stream in the quadrangle rise in old strip mines, fractured earth, oozing acid drainage like a biblical curse, promising nothing will ever grow here again. Here, where I learned to swim. Here, where the water tastes as bloody as a punch in the mouth. Why hasn't the ruin occurred to me until now? And why, only now, does anger rise in my guts like poisoned water? A couple of years ago, I had the good fortune to tour England and Wales, doing poetry readings and playing my fiddle with Mark Harshman, our poet laureate, who is also a traditional storyteller. And so we have a show that we do called Running with Whiskey, that is his traditional storytelling and my traditional fiddling and ballad singing and both of our original poetry. So the last place we played was at a place called Red House, which was the Union Hall in Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales, not far from Aberfan, which is where, right around the time of the Buffalo Creek disaster, they had a similar disaster. Instead of a slurry dam rupturing and flood, they had a slate pile slide down and bury the town. And, you know, dozens of people died. So I read that last poem there, and this little old woman came up and took both my hands in her hand, and she said, "In all my life, I never thought I'd hear a poem that had the acid mine drainage in it. They ruined every stream in the county." And it was just to hear that parallel, just put ice into my veins. You wouldn't think reading poems about West Virginia to a group of people in Wales would be as resonant an experience as it was, but it was. This is called Home Burial, a love poem. Please, don't allow any strangers to lie on this ridge, or any backhoes to dig into this ground. I need you to make a shovel-opened, shoulder-pride grave for me when I go. Box me, don't burn me. Store me in a hillside I know like my bones. Dig down to a clay floor so water won't get in too easy. While I want to die quickly, I want my body to linger as long as it can, at least a century between box and bare bones. There is no way you can bury me without entering the earth yourself. You need to know that worm's eye view. Feel the blade of the spade slicing through roots of unknowable plants. See the rectangle of trapped sky from the bottom of my grave. Make certain it's safe enough, deep enough, square enough to hold my eternity. Once I'm packaged and lowered, the preacher has intoned his boilerplate, and you have heaped your plate with fried chicken and pie. Shovel me covered. After you do this, there is nothing I will not do for you. I believe in the body, not its resurrection. I worked on a docupoetics project for a couple of years with a photographer from Virginia named Matt Eisch, and the final product was published in the Guardian newspaper in Great Britain. But we traveled around Webster County for a week in July and a week in December, and just talking to people. And Matt would make photographs. You've seen Matt's work, even if you don't know his name. Did anybody see those wonderful pictures of Yo-Yo Ma at the New River Gorge when he came through the state last year? That was Matt. I got to travel with Yo-Yo Ma and take those pictures. Matt's daughter plays cello, and Yo-Yo Ma's her favorite player. And Matt told Yo-Yo Ma that, and he goes, "Let's call her." And so he like video called her, and she's like, "Yo, what is it, Dad?" And he was like, "Hey, it's Yo-Yo. Just want to tell you, you should be practicing and not talking on the phone." Love that. Anyway, so one of the people that we met though was a gravedigger, and this was in December, and in the middle of winter he was hand digging. I guess in early winter he was hand digging a grave because somebody had requested that. I'll just do a couple more, and then I'll happily take any questions. This is called The Way We Do Things. Also a little, I don't know why, a little morbid, a little dark. It is that Appalachian fatalism, maybe. The way we do things. Around here, we keep our dead real close, set them a place at table, keep buttermilk in cartons at the back of the fridge for them. We lift the fiddle from the peg and play tunes they know, listening for their unbearably sweet humming and the padding of absent feet. The lightning bugs are their weightless souls, hovering over the lawn on summer nights. Give them a little music and watch the pale lights form figures. Right hand across, how do you do? Left hand back, fine, thank you. We keep their recipes in a tin box on the counter, consulting them like tarot cards when we're at a loss. Apple stack cake, cat head biscuits, venison jerky. Making their favorites is a charm against forgetting. We say their names, Ida, June, and Vernon, Moses, and Wilda, as we ladle and spoon, slice and serve. My father is getting ready for the day he meets and re-meets them, quizzing himself on names and dates with homemade flashcards, cocking his head like a spaniel when he feels one enter the room. Uncle Richard, right? We hold family reunions in the graveyard, set baskets of cold fried chicken and ham sandwiches on the slabs, and say a little grace. After cake and black coffee poured from my grandfather's battered thermos, I lay on the lawn among wilted carnations and feigned sleep, turning my face to the ground, whispering the news they need to know. Thank you. Thank you. I'll finish up with just a couple more here. Here's one called Vespers. I have a thing for fireflies. Latin bugs, as we used to call them when I was a kid. Vespers. The streetlights are rubbing their eyes awake. A blush of orange tinges the western sky. Optimistic bats patrol the space above the backyard. I think we can begin. O placidness, coming up like floodwaters around the foundation, we beseech thee, a little help. Dearest deity of the here and now, please throw a little light our way. Across the water is an island of soft grasses and lingering light. Goldfinches stand upright like Christmas bulbs in the plantation spruces, and fireflies flash on, off, on, through the night, never quite letting things go completely dark. This one's called Sycamores. This might be the newest poem in the book. Look, the sycamores are flying green flags of rebirth. All winter they've been faking their own deaths, standing in bone-white silence at the edge of the river. All winter, I believe they were waiting for the ferry to the far side to sink deeper roots into the underworld, but they are shallow and a little vain, and now are revealing their deceit, unfurling those delicate flags, staking their claim on the verdant world to come. Two more. It's your two-poem warning. This one I wrote for Irene McKinney. Kate and Ann, you were both, I think, here when I started this poem. We were with each other when I started this poem. Irene has one of her best-known poems is called At My Gravesite, Talbot Churchyard, West Virginia. And this is called Talbot Churchyard, West Virginia. At the gravesite, finally, after all the Buddhist, humanist, poetical nonsense, the preacher gets his say, intoning the scriptures into winter thin air. But as he utters his tired cliches, ashes and dust, and the dead rising again to walk, his voice diminishes until there is only the ticking of pelleted snow on open umbrellas, the mocking call of crows in the oaks, and the barking of a dog on the distant ridge, her voice pregnant with news no one wants to hear. That was for Irene. I lied to you. Oh, no, actually, I'll finish with this one, because the one I was going to finish with was a little grim, so I'll finish with this one. This is called If I'd Been Born in Bavaria. If I'd been born in Bavaria, my tongue would know the way around the marbled vowels in Kugelschreiber, would seek out smoky sausages and savor sour apples cooked in sweet cabbage. My closet would contain at least one peaked felt hat, even if rarely worn, and I would keep my mustache trimmed neat and my ruddy cheeks shaven clean. My children would ski, and I would be able to pretend convincingly I believed in the European Union. I'd look forward to my 6 weeks of summer vacation and spend it someplace civilized but slightly inferior, like Portugal or the US. But I likely wouldn't be standing in the middle of this road, watching crows by their 2s and 3s settle onto the power line like quavers onto a staff. And I might not know the difference between the red oak and the white, or which one to use to make a sturdy basket, or how. I'd be in a village somewhere north of Munich, several hours already asleep, and not here on this hillside, looking into this little valley, watching the fading light of evening, licking the green river gold. Thank you very much. I'm happy to entertain questions, rebuttals, complaints, manifestos. I used all 26 letters.
A and I and the other 26.
Yep, all 26. A, I, E, O, U, what? Used them all. I did read an interesting article about a study that was done at MIT about 3 groups of people who were asked to write an essay, one using ChatGPT, one using a search engine, and one just writing off the top of your head. And they hooked these 56 people up to electrodes to measure their brain activity. And as you might imagine, those who wrote completely out of their own heads just lit up the board. And those who used a search engine and kept referencing back and forth used less. And those who used AI didn't activate their brains hardly at all. But what was interesting is later they asked them all to write an essay, to write a summary of the essay they had written. And the people who used AI couldn't remember what they had written. And even like a week later, the people who had used AI, their brains still didn't light up even when they weren't using AI. And there's this thing that they call a cognitive debt that happens when you outsource your thinking and creation to AI. To me, that's the thing we ought to be talking about, because everything else follows from there.
Yep.
Everything else. I'm working on an essay that currently that's called A Deficit of Wonder. And so, yeah.
I have a
Yes.
Do you do more caution and do anything together these days?
Oh, yes, yeah, all the
The
time.
Whiskey on the Road, you mentioned, was that the correct title? Whiskey on the Road?
Oh, no, it's called Running with Whiskey.
Running with Whiskey. Do
Yeah.
y'all do anything like that?
We still do. We
Where
don't
do
have
you
anything
post?
booked right now, but yeah, I'll post it to my social media. And I have a website. It's just DougVanGundy.com that I'll post stuff to there and upcoming events. Yeah. Mark's great fun. My wife and I travel with he and his wife pretty regularly too. We took them to Paris a year and a half ago, I guess. Cheryl, his wife, had never been to Paris, and it was like one of her dreams, just to go and look at those paintings. She's a wonderful painter and writer and everything else. But so it was just, it's wonderful where you can see the like 8-year-old inside the 70-year-old. Just magic. But yeah, so we do that together whenever we can. Yeah.
How long have you had your MFA program, and what's that like? Is it a couple students?
It's so West Virginia Wesleyan, where I teach, has a Master of Fine Arts degree program in creative writing. And Irene McKinney was the founding director. It was put together by the whole English faculty. Irene came up with the idea and drew enough water to get the administration to pay attention. And but we all pitched in to make this thing happen, and we're going on 16 years now. It is a small program by design. We generally have between 12 and 15 students, and 7 faculty members, including me. And no single faculty member works with more than 2 students. So it's very personal, very hands-on. It's really a mentorship. We all get together in January, over New Year's Day and over the 4th of July, so that folks don't have to use all of their vacation to come to the residencies. And we meet for 10 days on campus at Wesleyan. We have intensive seminars, we have writing workshops, we have guest readers, readings that are open to the public. And then students go home and they work through the semester with one person, exchanging work via email and conferencing via Zoom. And then we get together again at the next semester. But it's sort of ideal for people who work, or people who have families and relationships that keep them one place or another. I did my MFA program at Goddard College in Vermont because I was living in Pocahontas County and married, and I didn't want to be away from my wife for 3 years, and she wasn't about to. She's a research forester, so she couldn't like root up all of her plants and take them to wherever I would end up. So it just allowed me to do the kind of study. And it's really, I tell people my elevator pitch for our program is 2 words, 3 if you count the conjunction: rigorous and nurturing. We push you, but it's about you. It's not competitive, it's non-hierarchical, it's trying to help each person become the best version of their writer self as they can be, and trying to address their needs and reinforce their strengths, which obviously in a creative field are going to be different for everybody. So that's what our program's like. And we currently have 14 students. We have had as many as 18. During COVID, we were down to 4. And at the beginning of COVID, there were 70, I think this is right, there were 74 low residency MFA programs. And within 2 years, there were 61. 13 graduate programs closed. So, that's more than 10%. It's like 15, 18% closed. But the Wesleyan administration, I must say, is completely behind this thing, and they said, we have faith, and we come back, and we're better than ever. Keep learning from our mistakes, so moving forward. Thanks for that question. Did I say
I was
that?
just gonna say that for something like a writing program, it seems like it could survive because it's a solitary activity.
Yeah.
And really, the best place for them to be doing that is at home anyway, right?
Right. I mean, we were able to do our program, we did our residencies remotely. So we were able to do them all over Zoom. And it wasn't ideal, but we made it work. If you have a program like that where it is so personal and it's so nurturing and people feel like immediately that they're part of it because it's just minimally hierarchical. Everybody pitched in and pitched ideas. Students pitched ideas for how we could make it better when we were remote. And of course, as soon as we could go back to being in person, we absolutely did, because that's the best way, obviously. Any other questions? Thank you all so much for coming. Thanks for having me. Thanks for asking me. And